Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond with your host Robin Hayhurst. In this podcast, Robin will introduce guests that have known failure and want to share their story about how they got through it and what happened next. This will make you learn how to see things from a new perspective and avoid making the same mistakes. Please welcome Robin Hayhurst.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bust and Beyond. I'm very privileged to be joined today by Matt Elwell. Hello, Matt.
Good morning. How are we doing? Great time to be alive, isn't it?
Oh, it's a fantastic time to be alive. I agree with you there.
I'm just looking at it. It's such a beautiful morning here where I am. It's amazing.
It has been good here, but it's a bit cloudy. I've got a Christmas jumper on today because I've been to a meeting where, and it's a bit early for me, November. So
I was going to ask about the jumper, but I think we can move on fairly quickly.
Absolutely. So, Matt, can you tell us a bit about you and your background? Because we always start with our guests and kind of where did you come from? How did you end up doing what you do now?
Yeah, it's a big question, mate. I've always been in sales, and I've been an entrepreneur since March 2000. So, yeah, my background is really initially in photocopier sales as a junior at first, and then started my own business when I was 20, selling tiles and bathrooms. So a retail background, really. And now for the last 6 years, as you know, I've been running, I'm co-founder of a sales training, communication, mindset training company, in the UK, here in Birmingham.
Okay, yeah, and I've been there a few times. So being part of your cohort and have gained a lot from it.
Thank you.
So you started off in photocopy sales. The business you set up, how did that come about? Why that business?
Yeah, good question. Well, my dad worked for the company in the 60s as a labourer, and the company actually was started by 12 Italian prisoners of war at the end of the Second World War in Droitwich in the West Midlands, and there was one Englishman and 12 Sicilians, and they got together and called the company Anglo-Italian, and the Italian contingency had a secret recipe for what is known as terrazzo flooring. So it's like a conglomerate of marble and lots of different things. Any of your listeners might remember these in like the old banks, like almost like a sort of gravelly marble type look, solid flooring. So the Bank of England, all the major banks all had terrazzo. And actually Anglo-Italian in Birmingham was responsible for doing a lot of those floors as a manufacturer. So my dad did his apprenticeship in the 60s and loved the values of the company, loved the ethos of the company, and stayed in touch with them for years. They also had a small retail outlet, so a couple of little tile shops, and they were well known for being a bit different. So not Tops tiles or porcelanosa, but like handcrafted English and Italian ceramics. And in 2000, that business had pretty much dwindled out. Everybody had sadly passed away, actually, and there were no generational, takeovers as such. But the Englishman, Armstrong Sly's last name was, his eldest son, or sons actually, ran one shop, and my dad and my brother took that shop over when it was dwindling in early 2000. And they asked me to join them because I'd got some experience in other businesses, other companies, and they hadn't really. So I joined very early on, and that's how it came about. And the company was, I would say it had got a great historical reputation, but it was pretty much not at a standstill, but it was just a very, very, very small tile shop operating out of a couple of old cow sheds in Birmingham.
So what's it like working with your brother and your dad? I mean, I've come from a family background.
Bloody hard work, as you know. I think, look, this has been, it's a big subject, and I know there's lots of people, again, who will be listening, who will either worked with loved ones or have to be around loved ones. And look, I think what I've worked out is that there are obviously pros and cons. When I look back, I realised that I had emotional contracts with both my dad and my brother. And when I look at the contracts and I look at my role in the contracts, and what I mean by an emotional contract really is like the behaviour that we both tolerated. When I look at it, there was a lot of behaviours that were good. There was a lot of behaviours that were okay, and there were a lot of behaviours that were not acceptable. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with working with family. The emotional contract is a bit different. So, like, I've got a business partner now, and we share 26 staff. And when I look at how the contracts, the emotional contracts, the way I would work with any of my staff now, it's just different when it's family. And I think that causes quite a few grey areas, Robin, to be honest. And you know, I look back with some pride. I look back with some embarrassment. I look back with some sadness. It's a real, you know, everybody says, oh, you're meant to look back and have no regrets and all the rest of it. Well, like, I think that's not true. It's like, you know, and everyone says you got to look back and learn and, you know, winning or learning. You go, yeah. And you can look back if you want with reflection, with sadness, with happiness, with joy, with discombobulation. And when I look back, I feel all of those things. And it's easy for me to grab positives and learnings. And also there's some stuff that I found tough. I'll give you a couple of examples. One was Dad was like what you'd call proper old school across the board. So like his views were old school around race, religion, women, politics, just his relationship with my mum. You know, he was born in the 40s. I'm not making excuses, but like somebody born in the 40s in industrial Birmingham is completely different to somebody born in the suburbs in massive affluence, which for me, compared to my dad, my upbringing was completely different in the 70s. So there were just cultural differences of opinion, differences of the way things should be done. And we never found a harmony around that, to be honest. It was challenging. And as hard as we tried, he was Dad. And also the mad bloke who was saying stupid things in the shop, you know, at the same time. So it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, what were your experiences like, how do you relate to that? Because I know you had some similar ones. Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Yeah, oh, you can, yeah. It's a conversation. It's just a conversation. I had a very dysfunctional family in some ways. Me and my father got on really, really well. And I remember him taking me to one side and saying, look, Robin, you know, we're working together now. If you disagree with anything I say, then, you know, please tell me. And I said, honestly, when I disagree with you, I will be telling you. So we had a great relationship. The rest of the family didn't. So I've got a sister and a brother, and we're estranged now, partly because of the company, partly because of other things that happened. So family companies are very complex. And looking back on it, there's lots of things that were going on that were dysfunctional. And, you know, these things happen. And it's something that I work with family companies now. And, you know, the first thing you work out is who really wants to be there? You know, who really is passionate about being there? Because lots of people go, it's a family company. I was made to join it. You know, they expect me to be the next MD. It's not really for me. I mean, that's just a death knell for any business. The bit that I really loved was how well I got on with my dad. And I got the privilege of working with him. He was a real gent. He had a different upbringing from your dad. Still was slightly out of kilter with, you know, the world changing around him. But, you know, he was a real gent, and he did business. You know, lots of my core values come from him. So kind of win-win. You know, he was a great believer in that. And he didn't knowingly do anyone in business. Well, that was a privilege to have the privilege of working with my dad for 15 years, and him teaching me and being my mentor was amazing. The rest was a bit so-so, really.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you said. What I love about what you just said is what your dad gave when he had that initial conversation. Look, Robin, we're working together, and here's how I think it could work. Like, there's just kindness and clarity. And I think, like, what my dad taught me, by the way, he taught me how to be punctual. He taught me how to be in service of clients all the time. His customer service was off the scales, to be honest, to the point where it actually wasn't profitable at times to be that good at service. And again, we didn't quite harmonise on that, but those were the things he taught me. I think we probably dwelled in false harmony most of the time. So we found a way of working together, and I don't think my dad particularly liked my style that much, and I don't think I liked his style that much, if I'm honest. But I think we both respected each other enough to find some harmony. But look, in 2009, in the end, my dad was approaching sort of 60. And my brother and I felt that the time had come really to sort of go, look, we're at a stage where, like, the business is doing quite well. You're seeing it one way, we're seeing it another. And we created a little bit of an us and them. And I think in the end, I'm quite proud of the fact that the three of us were able to thrash something out. And mum and dad, like, dad retired in 2009. And even like this month now, you know, mum and dad have received, you know, a nice chunk of cash from the business. And that has been really tough, by the way. Particularly the last 4 or 5 years. My brother had a brain tumour about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And there's been a lot of complications with that for obvious reasons, although he's made a full amazing recovery. But mum and dad, even now, are still benefiting from the company that we set up all them years ago, even though the trading aspect of it isn't there anymore. We actually we rent it out now to a couple of companies. So it's actually been, and I said this to my sister the other day, one of the greatest achievements of my life, actually, for my dad and mum, who dad had got no pension plan at all. He got no retirement plan. And that little family business that we turned around in early 2000s, 9 years later, he's able to retire and never work again. And that's been a real privilege. That part of it's been a real privilege, really. It's been tough at times, but it's been knowing that they've had that income has been great.
Yeah, I can understand that being a real comfort, actually, and that you instigated that and managed to get that to happen. You know, you talk about working with Dad on stage a lot, I notice, because there's some humour in the way he approaches things, which you find, which is another good thing, you know, that you can find humour in that and use it to get a point over that we're all different. We all have a different approach, and approaches change, don't they, as well?
Well, my dad's a character. He loves a fag. He's always got a fag on the go. He loves a bit of a swear and a bit of a grumble and a bit of a miser. You know, he's always moaning about fucking hell. He reads The Sun and he's like, oh, it's all horrible and everything. You know, that's just his style. But he's got some good little gags and he's got a good sense of humour. And look, he's a servant of people. You know, my dad will go the extra mile for anybody, anytime. And maybe he's right. You know, maybe he's right. And we should go the extra mile. I think that is definitely something I learned from him. His customer service was unbelievable. He'd always see it from the side of the customer, never see it from the company side. It was literally instantly just yeah, you're right, you're wrong. We've got it wrong. We'll sort it out. Don't worry. And that was his style. And I think the other thing I learned from him is that actually you do have to be, particularly in like a sales environment. You know, we had quite a bubbling showroom with lots of different characters, lots of different cultures. Like Birmingham's an amazing city for culture. We have got in this city every faith, every religion, every background. And our client base was like multicultural client base, you know, which caused some interesting conversations with my dad early doors, you know. But what I found is what Dad was great. I was just connecting and being himself. And look, sometimes he went too far. There's no question about it. Far too far. But often what I found is humans love it when they're talking to someone who's a bit different, who stands out from the crowd a little bit. And that's definitely something my brother, me and my dad prided ourselves on. As being natural. We were a family business. Our strengths as a family business were customer service, attention to detail, you know, connection, personality, communication, conversation, compassion for the client. Like, you don't get that when you go into some of the big stores. And that was our genius, really, I suppose. We were a community-based business, and we were small enough to care and big enough to deliver. So I think from that point of view, connecting with people and being yourself, I'd strongly urge anyone here that's listening that plays it a bit safe all the time, particularly in your business or in conversations. Right now, like, stop being so safe. Like, roll with it a little bit. Be a bit more playful when you're in contract negotiations. Maybe you're selling something. Maybe you're negotiating something. Like, bring your personality to the party a little bit more. I think that's what it taught us to do.
That's a really good point. I go to Brighton quite a bit to see a couple of clients, and in the station there's a coffee place, and there's a guy in the coffee. He's so full of character. He's shouting all the time. He doesn't talk. He shouts, and he tells jokes and everything else, and he's shouting. The queue for him is huge. The other side, the same coffee place, the other side, you can also get coffee. No one queues that side. So, you know, people like the characters, and I think that's really, really important in stuff. So your business, I mean, I know, you know, you grew it and you had your challenges and you had, you know, as all businesses do. What I've never really understood is, why did you leave? So why did you make the decision to do something really different, which is kind of go and train people how to do sales? I mean, that's, you know, that's a strange move forward. In fact, I say it's strange. I've gone from running companies to teaching people to run companies. So it's kind of a similar journey. But how did that come about? Why?
Great question. And look, I'm going to level with you. This is not a simple answer. It's a complex answer because there's multiple reasons that led to that moment in my life. And if I could summarize that, if it was a bicycle wheel, there's several spokes. So here's some of the spokes. I think firstly, just like absolute open and real, I was bored shitless. I was just bored. I'd been doing the same thing for 16 years. And my emotional contract with my brother and my dad was to play, and they might see it differently. It's just this is how I felt. I felt that the emotional contract was for me to be the solid one, for me to be the one opening up at 9 o'clock, closing up at 6, me to be doing the paperwork, me to be doing the admin, me to be doing the finances, me to be doing like all the sort of little nitty-gritty bits on a day-to-day basis. And that created a space for my brother to go out and sell. And he did the designs and I was much more based in the showroom, and my dad was much more hands-on. And then when it was just me and my brother, I became like showroom based and he was much more flexible. And I actually, in the end, realized that my best skills were not what I was doing. They just weren't. And like my best skills are connection, communicating, selling, negotiating, meeting people, opening doors. And actually, as the internet became more prominent, our showroom got less and less and less busy. And also we rented out a ground floor to a supermarket chain. So we had a 6,000 square foot 2-story showroom that was thriving with people. Then we did the rental deal, and that came down to about 600 square feet. So it's a bit of a studio rather than a hubbub, And that was the way the model needed to go, and that was fine. But yeah, firstly, I was bored. It wasn't challenging me. It didn't feel like, I just couldn't imagine doing that for the rest of my life. I didn't wake up one morning and go, I can't do this for the rest of my life. But for about 3 or 4 years, my patterns of behavior started to change a lot. I was using alcohol a lot more socially. 3 or 4 nights a week, I'd go and have a game of golf in the summer, a few pints, get home late. That became my stimulant, really. And with that, of course, comes lethargic thinking, lethargic lifestyle, putting on weight, not looking after myself at all, mentally, physically. I was starting to look for other things. And I just found that lack of motivation at work. And I used to walk to work and back every day. And the last 18 months, I hated every step. And it felt terrible because we got a good family business. We were making a really nice living. We both lived in a beautiful village south of Birmingham. Mum and Dad live there now. My brother was there. I was there. Our children went to the local schools. It was all tickety-boo from the outside looking in. But the truth is, I was absolutely dying inside. I just was. And I was embarrassed to say it out loud because I was really proud of the company and what we'd achieved and all of those things. And I don't think I was good enough as a person, not good enough, or I hadn't got the skills at that time, the personal skills really to unpack what I was feeling and to do or change it at the time. So I suffered in silence and for a bit. And then something really big happened, Robin. My uncle, who I really admired, got to a retirement age. He was a dentist and he was a fascinating man. His name was Peter Wintermore. He actually left South Africa in the 70s because he fought racism and he fought apartheid. And not that the colour of anybody's skin is important, but it is for this story. He was a white South African who fought, racism and was actually had no option but to leave or to do hard time in prison. So he turned up in the UK, met my mum's sister from Erdington, a man from Johannesburg and a lady from Erdington. Don't ask me how that happened, but it did. And they got married, beautiful man, beautiful family. And he came to retirement age and he got a brain cancer. And within 12 weeks, he was gone. 61, 62, young 60s, really healthy, didn't smoke, didn't drink, wasn't overweight, ran every morning, 5 o'clock, peaceful, spiritual, lovely human being, gone. And whilst I was sort of doing all the thing I was just explaining to you, then this happened and it was like, bloody hell. And from that moment on, I started to have a bit of a recurring nightmare. I had this vision of, and by the way, I don't know any of your listeners, I don't think. So I'm about to be really vulnerable here because it's not something I share massively. I have talked about it, but this is me being, totally vulnerable, if I'm honest. So the recurring nightmare that I had, and please don't judge me, I'm just going to tell you what it was. It was coming from my subconscious mind, from my out of body place. I kept having this nightmare where I was being lowered into the ground. This is a bit morbid, isn't it? At my funeral. And there were a fistful of family and friends round my grave, which is weird already because I'm not going to be buried. I'm going the other way, if that makes sense. And then behind me was my headstone that somebody else had selected for me. And it said, "Here lies the great Matt Elwell." I don't understand why it said those words, but that's what it said. And then in the strapline underneath, it said, "Who didn't add up to very much." And I was like, and I ignored that for quite a long time. And I realized that was my, call it what you want. I think it was the non-physical part of me saying, you got to change. You got to do something different. So that was going on in the background internally. And there are a number of other factors at play. One of them being the relationship with my brother had broken down quite a lot. We were no longer aligned on a vision, and his path was going that way, and my path was going that way. This space was getting wider and wider and wider. And I think at that time in our lives, we were not aligned on vision or values. And there was tension, there was false harmony, there was tension. There were two different people trying to achieve two different things in a very small space. And that was really challenging, and no question about it. And then last but not least, I'd been selected as a volunteer by England Rugby in 2015. I was the chairman of a local rugby club, grassroots rugby club. And the RFU, the Rugby Football Union, had noticed that there were certain people in clubs around the country, I happened to be lucky enough to be one of those people, that were from a different demographic and a different age group, being frank, to the people that were running the game at the time. And they felt that the rugby at amateur level needed an influx of some younger people with some fresh ideas. And I was humbled, genuinely humbled to have been selected. And the Rugby Football Union invested a real chunk of cash on leadership training, and they sent me and 23 others to the most beautiful university called Ashridge University in Hemel Hempstead. Amazing centre of excellence. And for 18 months, we did like the equivalent of a diploma in leadership and psychology. So you could say, Robin, that my head was turned a little bit, because there I was, standing behind a counter, Google searching things and not seeing a lot of people and doing all the paperwork and sort of feeling a bit trapped. And then all of a sudden I'm on this amazing training course with, 23 really positive people. And I was like, wow, there's another world that I could be in. And I just felt more comfortable in that world. I felt more heard. I felt more alive. My brain was ticking. I was going to bed at the end, and like my brain was just got loads of new ideas. And I literally felt like a genie who'd come out of the lamp. Like it was like, I'm here. It was like one of those moments in my life. And then I sort of go back to the retail show, and I was like, so it was like, and it felt like, do you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do, but this world, this coaching, consultancy, thingy-wingy that I'm learning over here, I want it. I don't know what it is, but I want it. I want to know what it is. And that was the final part, really, that made me go, if I can find a way of severing the relationship with my brother and leaving him in a strong place, and my parents in a strong place, and me in a strong place, then, I think the time's come.
I mean, I relate to so much that you said there. The use of alcohol, that's been your stimulant. I've never seen myself as having a problem with drink. My wife would have a different view on that, but I went through that. I was bored. Boredom is something that kind of creeps up on you, and you suddenly realise this just is not exciting me. I can't get a vision for this business. And I was very stuck in working for housing associations clients, and I was finding them very difficult to work with, and it just was not fun. And I don't know how I came to coaching. I really couldn't tell you even now. It was really complex, and it was very, lots of pivots and lots of changes. But I think the thing is I enjoy living my life outside my comfort zone. So there's something about that really kind of keeps me alive and keeps me kind of buzzing. So, you appear on stage quite a bit, and I've seen you 3 or 4 times now, doing a fantastic set, always changes, very powerful.
Thank you.
I'd quite like to do that. That's something that would really scare the Billy out of me, but I'd quite like to do that. I present to bigger and bigger groups now. I help a lot of people, and it gives me a really good sense of well-being, and that I'm doing something positive out there. So, I mean, so much. I mean, you unpack so much in that in that time. It's difficult to kind of cover it all, but I totally understand that. And also the kind of the world that you're talking about, this kind of coaching world, or whatever you want to call it, it's so different, and it's a kind of industry in itself, and everyone knows each other, and there's lots of events around it, and they're fun, they're exciting, you learn stuff, and it is a different world to anything I've done before. And that world kind of exists kind of parallel, but never kind of mixing with the world of actually doing the coaching. So and
I think I was just going to say one thing, Robin, because I agree with what you just said. One thing I would say about like being on stage and being a trainer and a speaker and a coach and everything, what I would say, this comes from my coach, actually, a guy called Jeff Mask, who's a tremendous man, lives in Utah, Salt Lake City. He has a great saying, it's never as good as it looks from the outside, and it's never quite as bad as it feels from the inside.
Absolutely. I think all businesses are like that, aren't they? And you look at people. On one of the events I went to, I met a couple of young ladies who they're bookkeepers, and they do a bookkeeping podcast. And you're going, well, you're on stage, you're doing really, really, really well. And they are doing really, really well, but most probably not as well as I think they're doing. And they're most probably doing better than they think they're doing. By the way, they're coming on as a guest to this podcast between now and Christmas at some point. But it was really interesting because they were obviously quite worried about being on stage. It didn't show at all. And having now kind of followed them on LinkedIn, I know that they're worried about going on stage, and they're worried about going on all stages because it's something that...
So am I.
Yeah.
Every time you speak, it's a very, very, very vulnerable place to be. Happy to share that.
Yeah. I think it's a lot easier to sit there and watch and judge people. But, I think some of the stuff that comes out on stage and the events I go to, which tends to be entrepreneurial events, so Expert Empires, which you're heavily involved in, and the Entrepreneurs Marketing Conference, which was in Brighton, I think it's in London next year.
Yeah.
You've got loads of different speakers, loads of value up there, really interesting.
Was that with Nigel Box?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it.
So lots of different events. But I don't go there because my clients are there. I go there because I'm learning. I'm still learning.
Yeah, and I love that, Matt. I love that about you. And I just want to pick up on something. It might be helpful for people listening. I'm not sure. But I know a lot of people want to speak in public, and I either hear, I'd love to speak in public, but I'm scared, or I hear, I could never do that. It's not for me. And I'll tell you what's been amazing about being able to share my philosophy from a stage has been the impact. So I'm in my 6th year of doing this, and in London last week at Expert Empires, I had 270 people who'd never heard me speak before, and about the same again who had. And what was really humbling for me was I'd never had so many people come over and say, I've heard you speak before, and I heard something today again. It was like, wow, I heard it in a different energy, or it's the first time I've ever heard you speak. Amazing. And I'm sure there are one or two are like, yeah, it's rubbish, of course. But generally, the great thing about a stage is that you can make a difference. You can have an impact, one to many. And again, back in the showroom all them years ago, giving someone a great service where there's maybe a family involved, or you can have an impact, definitely. Like we used to regularly get clients say, like we've been around to loads of tile and bathroom showrooms, and they're nowhere near as friendly as this one. So it was having an impact, and that's always been a big part for me. But I think for anybody thinking about public speaking, the best part has been people coming over and saying, I heard you speak 5 years ago, and you said X, Y, Z. You're like, oh, God, did I? And they went, and that changed my life, and that gave me a boost, or that helped me solve something. And you're like, wow, really? That is like, you go in my old world, I just couldn't have that reach or impact. And in the new world, I can. And, I'm really lucky because I've now spoken in the Middle East. I've spoken in America. I've spoken in Europe. I've spoken I was in Germany a few weeks ago. I've spoken all over the UK, Scotland, Ireland. And you start to realise that actually your philosophy or your message or your thing or whatever it is that you want to get across, it could be part of your story that could inspire or educate. It's such a great way of doing it. And Robin, for anybody listening, if you go onto any of my profiles now, you might see a photograph of me in front of 1,000 people in Dubai or something, or 500 people in London. But if you scroll back a bit, there were 12 people in a library. 2 were pissed. 1 was looking the other way, and two others were chatting in Norwich on a Monday night. And like, I learned that way, like genuinely I did. And I've had people walk out. I've had people throw things at me. I've had the lights go off. I've had the building, like all the electricity go. I've had thunderstorms and lightning hit the building. Like, I've had it all. But what I would say is, for anybody thinking about it, like, really, it is a great opportunity. If you feel like there's something in your body that can happen. By the way, like when I first started as well, libraries, village halls, like honestly, there's a village hall across the street from where I live now. I live in the suburbs of Birmingham, in the countryside a little bit, and there's a beautiful little village hall. And if I wanted to go and do a talk once a month, I'd get 15 or 20 people. I could go and talk about sales and my philosophy and maybe talk about mindset or something. So again, like, you can do this stuff if you really want to, and it can be really impactful.
And I love the value bit. So I think it was you that said this. So it's about, if you go out there and give value, you go out there and make sure that you're not kind of holding back in what you're telling people, it comes back to you. And I, through the podcast, through social media, I'm on social media a lot. Not that a lot of people see me, but I'm on social media a lot. But I do get feedback. Oh, I heard you say this. I changed my business and it's changed everything.
Yeah.
So something you said to me the first time we ever met on a 3-day, 1-day kind of free event that you did at your offices, you said, right, well, the really important thing to do is in sales is to book the next stage. Never been in sales, not knowingly, sold houses, but I always thought that's quite easy. Yeah. Never thought of that. So, and that kind of changed a lot. So if anyone's trying to work with me, by the way, you'll notice that I'll try and book the next stage because it's important for you. It's important for me
the logical
that we know,
next
that we know what pace we're going at and we know what we're going at. And that came from you. And I remember I was so impressed when I came back. I treated myself to a coffee machine because I knew I was coming back a little bit at your offices. So I thought I'll have a coffee machine. I'll buy you a coffee machine because then I can have good coffee when I come here.
You're led. Well, I mean, what an amazing thing to do. I think you were doing that as a gift, but actually it was for you, really, wasn't it?
It was for me. It was one of those. It's a bit like I've always told people I love giving. Love giving, but it's always a selfish thing because I enjoy giving so much.
Yeah. Well, a great friend of mine, you might know him, Gordon Bircham, his name is. He's got a great little saying that, he feels alive when he's giving. And we always say, like, I'm living when I'm giving. And actually, I do think that, with what I teach, sales, communication, negotiation, there is an element of both parties being in harmony with each other. And, when we're both giving each other respect, when we're both giving each other clarity around what would need to happen for it to be a great result, then you can be in service whilst selling and exchanging contracts. And that's how I teach it. I think it's a great way of doing it. Very collaborative.
Absolutely. I think the other thing, I think we discussed this before a couple of times, but what impact, and this comes up a lot in my podcast, what impact did imposter syndrome have on you?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, look, for me, I'm going, like, if you walk into a room and you don't feel any imposter syndrome at all, and you don't feel like, do I belong? Am I in the right place? Then, like, for me, firstly, that would not be natural because actually, pretty much every time I'm doing things at the moment, I'm either going up a notch or doing things I haven't done before, or doing things that are new, or trying to do something new, or like, I feel like I have been pushing myself quite a bit at times. So I find that imposter syndrome is a bit like a wet cloak that you can take off. So if you overthink it so much, then like the cloak just sort of covers you up and you're in trouble. What it does for me is it kind of gets me sharp now. What I've learned to do with imposter syndrome is really to utilize it as it keeps me sharp. I go, okay, so I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I'll share something that only about 3 other people know. Last week I spoke in 500 people in an audience where I'm well positioned, already well known. And what I mean by that is I've been speaking in it for 5 years and lots of customers in the room who've benefited. And so it's like kind of an easy audience, if there could be such a thing. I'm known, and positioned as well as you can be. So it's an easier thing. And just before I went on stage, I pulled my business partner to one side and I said, look, I am not in the right energy to go on that stage. Like, I'm really not in the good space. I need some help, which is very, very rare for me. And when I look back on the experience, I think part of it is because I wasn't feeling the nerves that I normally feel in an audience where I'm less known, I think. Now I've done a bit of analysis. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's like I wasn't feeling any imposter syndrome at all, but I was feeling a bit discombobulated. And Nick was great. He was like, well, firstly, just like, let's focus on, we call it game thinking. Let's focus on all the things that you're amazing at as a speaker that have got you this far. Like, what things that you're going to bring to that stage. I was like, I can do that, and I can do that. He's like, great. And straight away, I'm already in a completely different energy. And we call that game thinking. So I was worried about all the things that I hadn't thought about, I hadn't done, or things that were going to go wrong. I was worried about what might be in the gap. And he just took me straight to like, well, how far have we come? Which is a really powerful thing to do. And it's something that we employ as a group. By the way, this is one of those things where I could have coached myself, because I coached that to other people, if that makes sense. We have a bit of a laugh, actually, because we go, what's the one thing that we've coached somebody else this week that we need to coach ourselves? It's quite funny because all the time there's something. So, just before I went on stage, I was a bit discombobulated, and getting myself aligned and getting myself in the right frame of mind, then I felt like it was one of the most impactful talks I've ever given. And the feedback I got was that as well. And I put it down to one thing, is that I changed my beliefs in the moment and got myself into the right frame of mind to be in service of the audience and to really focus on giving them an amazing experience. And overcoming that imposter syndrome feeling was actually a positive thing. So I think it's about having awareness that it's going to be there. And mate, every single time I do something that I haven't done before, I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, and then realise you've got to utilise it and use it as a power, not a weakness.
I think it is a power, and I think the ability to push through it is really important. I mean, I was coaching a group of people not that long ago, and I literally came to a point, and I've never had a panic attack, but I literally thought, oh my God, what am I going to do here? I don't know if I can carry on. And it must have been a momentary nanosecond, because I just carried on. But in my brain, I was literally going, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it, And then I kind of carried on, and it was fine. And, it all went very, very well. So we all get it. I think we all get that kind of panic, that feeling, and it's how we deal with it. And I think so many people are controlled by it. And I'm definitely not controlled by it. I wouldn't be doing anywhere near, I wouldn't be doing a podcast if I was controlled by my fear. I remember doing the first one. I don't know how good it is looking back on it, but I set up a mic and I started talking.
You did.
And it was quite odd. Imposter syndrome, I think, is a big thing. I think what people need to understand out there. Someone once said to me, if you live in outside your comfort zone, your world gets bigger. So, and I think that's the point. If you do things on a regular basis that make you uncomfortable, your world is going to get bigger. And the bigger your world is, the better it is for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, there's 3 things I wrote down. We were talking earlier. As far as I can see, what drives imposter syndrome, there's multiple things, but there are 3 key things that I see that you've got to look out for. I think one of them is judgment. So I don't care what anybody says. I think judgment is one of the biggest challenges that we all have to go through. We're constantly judging everybody else all the time. We just do. And what that does is it creates comparison. And when you're judgy, you start to compare yourself to others. And the only way you can do that is through assumption. And I believe that all assumptions are unhelpful. So that little triangle of it's a triangle of pain, to be honest. Judgment of others, comparing yourself to them without knowing the facts, and then making a lot of assumptions that then turn into your belief pattern. And I just see so many people in business at the events that I go to, at the places I speak to, who have created a set of beliefs based on assumptions and presumptions without any facts at all, because they are judgy and comparing themselves. And it's never good when they do that. It's never good.
Well, I think because I've sat through your teaching, coaching on numerous occasions, something you say, and I use it a lot, is, well, who did the survey? Who proved that fact? When people say, I can't sell it for that, I can't sell, people don't want this product, people don't want this. Well, how do you know?
Yeah, which people?
Who,
The names? Where do they live?
Yeah.
When did you ask them? Mate, honestly, this is really hard to say out loud because it's actually painful for me. I suffer pain when I think about it. The amount of human beings in business that I meet that have created this bubble of bullshit that they live in, that then leads to procrastination and fears and lack of performance and lack of results and poor mindset, poor mental health. It's all in here. They just create so much bullshit that's not true, and it's really challenging. I mean, I do feel blessed every day. I'm grateful for the fact that, as you've just said, you can specifically remember my training. Like, one thing in my training that you can remember is about mindset. No, but I mean, you quoting that thing that I teach all the time, which is...
I can remember a bit more than just one thing, but...
If you sit there in business and without having any actual evidence or facts in front of you, and then start to have a look or notice what you believe to be true, then you'll realise that you've got belief patterns that are completely false. So, I have people that believe that nobody is investing any money at the moment. And if you just think about that single sentence, there are 8 billion people on the planet, and I'm dealing with an individual who genuinely believes, that no one is investing at the moment. And they say those words out loud. Yeah, people aren't investing at the moment. And they say that, and they say it, and they live it, and they breathe it, and they own it. They own it. They go, no, but people aren't buying at the moment. No one's investing. It's Christmas is coming up. And you go, well, hang on a minute. Wait. One sec. Which specific people are you referring to? Just so I'm clear. And then they laugh. And that laugh is the moment when they start to go, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. I am believing things that are not true. And then what happens is all the other things that they believe that are not true in their life start to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's an embarrassment laugh. I've seen it so many times. People are actually embarrassed because they suddenly realise the situation they put themselves in. And you take construction at the moment. People are saying, well, there's no work out there. I have clients that are so busy, it's ridiculous. They can't fit in all the work.
Going to the centre of Birmingham at the moment, you can't move.
And the thing is, if you look at construction and, doing people's extensions and stuff like that, if you've got you've got the right branding, you've got the right price, you've got the right service, you're going to be busy. There's a shortage of people. Now, if you're not busy, one of those things or all those things are wrong. It's not the market.
Yeah. And we've got to be respectful. We've got to be respectful of cultural differences, economical challenges, trends in the marketplace. Of course we have. Since I've been an entrepreneur, there's been so many little omni-budgets, multi-budgets, this budget, autumn budget, recession, Brexit, Remain, Brexit levers, knobs, fucking everything, COVID, it's the wars that it just is always and yet I've always had paying customers all the way through, sometimes more than others and all of those things. But actually, when I look back, it's during the recessions and during the hardest times where the consistency, you've just said this, by the way, where the consistency of my message, the business that I was running, really resounded. So 2 times, in 2008 and 2009, when there was a recession, a global recession, the banks went bust. That's how bad it was. The banks went bust. My business came through it because we said, right, switch your marketing off, get clear. And here was our message. We were like, look, if you are in our world, on our email address, or you've used us in the past, and despite all the economic situation that we've got going on, are genuinely considering a product in your home when it comes to tiles and bathrooms, we are the go-to place. We want that opportunity. We're small enough to care. We're big enough to deliver. We've got flexibility on quality, on price, on brand. But we will not cut corners. That was our mantra. And by clarifying that, by doubling down on that, we made sales and got through it. And then recently, when COVID came in this company that I've got, we were literally, happy to be right or wrong if someone's listening, but as far as I could say, we were literally in the tiny percentage of companies that did not react and pivot and change everything. Our response to COVID-19 was, we are a live training company, and we will continue to do all of our live trainings from our training centre. And you can either, if it's legal to do so, come and carry on in safety, or we'll deliver it on a Zoom. And we were one of the very few companies that did not react and respond. We didn't create a brand new program. We didn't change everything. And I'm not saying the ones that did were wrong. I'm just saying how we chose to do it was like, we're the go-to place. If you're now needing to sell over a Zoom and negotiate over Zooms and you haven't got those skills, you've got to join our program, you've got to come to our training. We lent into it and got super clear. And actually, we did well through COVID. It was after COVID that it's been a bit more challenging in our business. But so both those times, by sticking to our principles and being clear on our front end message, we've had paying clients.
Wonderful. So I always ask all my guests at the end of the podcast, it's a bit finite, but what are the 3 things that you have learned throughout your career that you think businesses could do to avoid failure?
Yeah, good question. Well, the number one thing, as far as I can tell, that if you want to avoid failure, you've got to be an ethical company. And what I mean by that is, if you are committed to getting results for your customers, even if you know that your customer service isn't where it needs to be yet, even if you know your product and service has got to get better, if your intention when somebody buys from you is to solve a problem, get them a result, accelerate something, and you are committed to getting that person, that company, a result no matter what, then that is the first place. I just see so many companies that are set up to make themselves a load of money, which, I get that, but then they don't deliver on their promises. So it's like, that's the first step for me. So really it's about under-promising and over-delivering every single time. As far as I can tell, it's a bit like my rugby club, right? If the first team lose 50-0, people are moaning about a bit of dust in the corner of the room and the cleaner missed the cobweb, right? If they win 50-0, nobody gives a fuck. So again, it's like, look, just get your client a result and do everything you can and own it. Don't be a victim. If something goes wrong, just own it and solve it. And if you can get them success, you'll be successful. That's biggest learning for me. The second thing is, and I'm really clear on this, is you got to get world class at getting your money in. It's all about cash flow. It really is. Your business needs petrol in the tank, just like a car. It needs money in the bank, petrol in the tank. And you just got to get great at when somebody agrees to pay you for your product or service, that whatever's been agreed around the money, you get that sorted, and don't leave it and don't hope that they're going to pay you on time. And, hope's not a strategy when it comes to money. It's like, this is what we've agreed. This is when it needs to be paid by. When can I expect it? Who's going to be responsible for it? What do you need from me? What are the mechanics? And you've got to get the money in. You just have nothing worse. I've been in a position where I've done work and not been paid, and that's a disaster. It's terrible for your energy, and it leads to bad places. So get great at getting your money and learn to say no when you feel or sense that someone's not aligned on values around money. And then the third key lesson is this, and I'm working on this hard right now, is that to never forget that it's just business. I don't take it personally, and you can build a business aligned with your personal values and you can create the life you want. And what I'm working on at the moment, which I have not done a good job of in the past, is that my success in business, I don't want that to define my life as a person. And I think that detachment from the business is, I think everybody would like it, but deep down, most of us have never had that. And actually, we see our whole life as how well we do in business. And that is a nightmare, as far as I can tell. It's just a business. You look at any of the great business men or women in history, many of them have failed many, many times in business. I've failed in business myself. We all have. I've many moments where I got it wrong. And even to this day, things go wrong and you get it wrong. But don't let that define you. I've still got to be a dad. I've still got to be a husband. I've still got to be a son, a brother, a cousin, a friend, an uncle. And the humanity side of business is business. Create the best one you can, be as ethical as you can, And also, don't let a bad day in business turn you into a bad person.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I think lots of value in this podcast. So I'd just like to ask the listeners if you can please press that subscribe button. So follow us so you can be updated on all the latest ones that come out. And any feedback. I mean, give us some feedback. We're talking to mics at the moment, so it's quite nice to get a bit of feedback. And when we do, we really, really appreciate it. So thanks ever so much, Matt, for joining us. And it's been great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Bust and Beyond with Robin Hayhurst. Be sure to tune in next time and visit his website at robinhayhurst.com.